See, we got some people getting on, so we'll give it just a few more minutes to make sure that we have everybody up, and then we'll get going. Make sure I get everything that I need pulled up. Wait just a few more minutes. I see we got 2 people on already. Just making sure we give everybody enough time to hop on before we really dive deep into it and get going. Don't want anybody to feel like, they missed anything, or they have to go back and listen to certain things if they didn't get a chance. So give it just another minute or 2 and then do an introduction and kind of get going. So as everybody can see, Coach Anthony's in the live chat here. I can see it at least. And that's kind of the whole talk will just be me explaining different things, answering questions that, Anthony and I have come up with, and answering things that are specific to college soccer and recruitment. But feel free, anybody, to put a question into the live chat. If I see a question that I know is very specific and needs to be answered immediately, I'll do my best to answer it quickly. And then from there, I'll be able to see what everybody wants to know. If you feel like there's something that I don't explain deep enough and you want more of an explanation on something, feel free to put it in the live chat, and I'll make sure that I answer as many questions as possible through this time. Should be about 45 minutes max, something right around there. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's evening. I know it's a bit later over there in Georgia. I'm in Oklahoma, so it's about an hour difference. Still pretty light outside. It will be for a couple more hours, so don't want to take up too much of everyone's evening. But I'll go ahead and do an introduction. My name is Chase Robertson. I'm a college soccer coach. I currently, I'll be moving into a position at the University of Central Arkansas, which is an NCAA Division I institution in Conway, Arkansas. For the past 18 months prior, I was working at the University of Tulsa as an assistant there. Before that, I was working with the Colorado Springs Switchbacks in the USL Championship for the 2020 season. Worked there through the pandemic. Definitely a different environment to be in. Prior to that, I did 2 years with a very successful Division II university in West Texas, my alma mater, Midwestern State University. And then I started my college coaching career at Ouachita Baptist University, which is a small private university in a very, very small town in Arkansas. So I've coached at different levels through college soccer, as well as being on the professional side for a year. And I also have done various things with different clubs, and also helped out with high schools and things like that throughout my coaching career. So hopefully I have enough knowledge to answer questions that anybody may have. So I'll start with just a few questions, and obviously with this being a live stream, people can answer and watch right now. If I answer something and we don't have somebody comes back later, feel free to find a way to reach out to me and I can answer if you've watched this after it's saved as a post. So the first thing that I want to answer, and it's very specific, is what characteristics do you look for in a student athlete? So I think each coach has a specific type of not only athlete but a specific type of person that they're looking for, and that's varies drastically from school to school. I spoke with a friend of mine who's coaching at Bucknell University yesterday, and he was talking about the type of person that they try and recruit to that university. It's in just outside of Philadelphia in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. It's a private university. It's not the cheapest university in the world to attend, so they have to find players and they have to find people that not only can play at that level but can afford school, because they don't have, we don't have infinite scholarships where we can just throw a ton of money at people, but are the type of person that'll fit in with the university and fit in with everything that's going on. So everyone looks for something different. Me in particular, when I'm scouting or when I'm recruiting, when I'm looking for players to bring into every university, this is just universal to me as a person. I look for someone who's a good person first. If you're a good kid and you're someone that I want to work with, regardless of the level, whether you're, first teamer, you're a guy that's always first on the team sheet. If you are a kid that we see can develop into something in a year, or a kid that we see can develop over time, those things are minimal in what I look for in a student athlete. I look for someone who's got a good character, someone who's going to work, someone who's going to put everything they can into being a good college soccer player. And that encompasses a lot of different things. That encompasses on the field stuff, but also off the field. Are you going to be good for the community? Are you going to be good for the university? Are you going to be a good student? And are people going to have good things to say about you? Because the players that we bring in are a reflection of us. And I want to say that I'm a good person, and that's the type of people that I want to teach and I want to continue to develop over time. So that's probably the biggest characteristic in a student athlete, is good people. We look for good people. We look for kids that deserve the opportunity. If someone deserves the opportunity and we know that that's a kid that's going to do everything they can to positively impact the game and positively impact our program, that's someone we're going to bring in. So that's the main characteristics, and like I said, every coach looks for something different. What's most important for me to do right now as a 9th/10th grader? I think the biggest thing for younger players in high school and club soccer, whatever it may be, is to start to figure out what type of player you are, what type of player you want to be, and how that's going to fit into various college programs. If you're a player who's extremely technical, do student athletes' school classes schedules look a lot different from other students? Absolutely. And I don't want to butcher your name, but I'm hoping it's Ziad. They're so drastically different. Student athletes have blocks of time that they dedicate to certain things. So we have a daily schedule, kind of looks more like a full day of work, as opposed to a student that's just a regular student in a university who may have class in the morning, may have a giant window of free time in the middle of the day, and then may go to work in the afternoon, may not work. There are different types of people. So a student athlete, typically for the universities I've been, I'll give you Tulsa for an example because I was just there. We trained in the morning, so we trained at 8 a.m. So that means the players are getting up around 6 a.m., 5:45, and they are doing everything in preparation for what we have to do for the day. So certain days of the week we have extra things we have to do prior to training. So there may be a lifting session at 7:30. For 30 minutes, they go in and lift, they get an activation in, and then they come out to the field and they train. Or they may have film at 7:15, so they're making sure they're up and prepping their bodies ready to go. So their day starts fairly early. We train from 8 to about 10. Some days it's 8:30 to 10:30, just depends on the day. So we go from about 10, and then 11 to, I would say, 2 o'clock, roughly around that area, 2 to 3. That's when most of our students schedule their classes. It just worked out that way where all the classes on campus, they didn't begin until 11. So a lot of our players didn't have any conflicts or anything like that with an early morning training session. So they would go from 11 to about 3. And different days, so Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are your 50-minute classes, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays are an hour and 20. So you may have 3 classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 2 classes on Tuesday, Thursday. So your time's going to be varying each day. You may get, a class at 11, a class at 12, and then your next class isn't until 2. You have blocks in the day. From 3 to the next morning, that's pretty much their time to do with what they need. I will say, being a college athlete, being a Division I athlete, being a Division II, even Division III, it doesn't vary much. When you finish your training and you finish classes, it's not free time. It's time to continue to work. So you may go, to the gym and get a recovery session in after your class, so you're prepared for the next day's training. You may get a study session in. You may get a tutoring session. You may have something that you're wanting to do in a tiny block, and then the rest of the evening is spent studying for your classes, because college soccer, for college sports in general, for most people, is a lifestyle. It's something that you dedicate a lot of time and effort to. And so your class schedule is such a small part of what you do day to day. Regular students are able to engage in activities, are able to do a lot of things. Student athletes don't do as much of that, but there's so much that gets put into being a student athlete that your days are always full. For an example, at a Division II, I'll give you my daily routine that we did my 4 years there. So we had class from 8 to noon. That was my daily routine, was class in that time span. And then from about noon to 2 was time for me to eat lunch, whatever it needed to be. 2 o'clock, we would go to the weight room, get in the weight room, do some sort of workout with our strength and conditioning coach from about 2 to 2:50. Then training was at 3. Training would go from 3 to 5. Then we would go eat dinner, and study hall started at 7. It would go from 7 to 9. Then you go home and you study for the next day's classes. That's a day starting at 7 a.m. and ending at 9 p.m. So that's kind of where it is. Colin, what would a usual training session look like as a student athlete? So each coach has a varying methodology. Everybody I've worked with has been drastically different. I think at different levels you have different quality coaches. So that's not to say that any coach is bad or anything like that, but I think the further you go up, the more rigorous the training schedule is going to look like. So our typical sessions for us at a Division I, University of Tulsa, top 10, high as number 2 in the country, came into the national tournament at 6. We would do, so most of the week, you get there 15 minutes early for training. You have 15 minutes to get some sort of activation, whether that be a foam roll, bands, some sort of thing to get your body going. That's when our boys did the rondos. That's when they did 2-touch games, just to kind of get their blood flowing. Then they would come over to me, and I would do the warm-ups. So we would go through a dynamic warm-up. We would also go through another muscular activation that would entail, some sort of agility, some sort of stability, things that are going to prepare their bodies. From there, technical work. So the technical session could be a passing pattern, it could be dribbling, it could be, movements that are specific to us. It could be something that's technical yet functional. We would go for that for about 20 minutes, go into a more functional exercise. So depending on the periodization of the day, if you're game day -2, you may at that point get something very functional with your defensive work or something very functional with attacking stuff. And then from there, you go into a bigger sided activity. So you finish always with a bigger sided activity, whether that be, a game with conditions, whether that be a 2-goal game or a game with 1 goal on the end line and 3 goals at halfway, and you're working on specific things. Each day has its own function. From there, after the bigger functional activity, players get into the recovery part. So they go back into groups. They're doing foam rolls again. They're doing stretches. They're making sure they're taking care of their bodies. I also have a good portion of players that do extras. What I mean by extras is they'll come after training, stay 15 to 20 minutes. It could be specific things. It could just be touches. It could be, driving a ball to another player for 20 minutes, working on touch and working on, longer distance passes. Sometimes they come to me and they ask me for something specific. So the strikers, a lot of the times, would ask me for specific finishing. So things that I know they need to progress and they need to work on, I would add that. So in that 2-hour time span, we're hitting all of those things. Days change. So like I said, with periodization, if you're in a game day -2, which means 2 days before a game, you're doing something specific. Game day -1, so day right before a game, your session is an hour long. It's very easy, it's very relaxed, very controlled to make sure that you're as prepared as possible to play the next day. So training sessions, like I said, every coach varies in different ideas and different ideologies. But I think the biggest thing you'll see in a college atmosphere is the intensity and the level of competition. The intensity that is brought into those sessions is, I had another person I was working with who said something very, very poignant today. College soccer players are, if you look at a percentile rate, right? The professionals are the top 90% of soccer players in the world. Those are the guys that are pros. Division I college soccer players, they're, 75 to 90. So the intensity level is very similar to that of a professional atmosphere. You're competing, you're working, you're trying to do everything you can to not only get better, but also maintain your level every day. So we do a good job as college coaches to make sure we stay on that track. I hope that answered the question. I know that was long-winded, but that's typically how sessions go. Do you look at high school soccer for recruiting, club versus high school? We do look at how can a player who is smaller right now in high school impress a scout during a game. Smaller as in physical stature. So there's a thing, and it's a good idea and a good question to ask. And I spoke about this with a friend of mine yesterday as well. If let's say you're not the most athletic kid in the world right now, there's so much more that you can do than be athletic. A lot of college coaches, and I will admit that a lot of college coaches, especially in the East Coast, those Big Tens, those schools over there, it's a very rough and very strong game. They look for size, they look for strength, they look for speed. That's what they look for. In the South, a lot more of coaches tend to go for more of a technical aspect. They want to look for technical players. So I would say a player who is smaller right now, who is still in their growth spurt and still growing fully into their size, I would say become a more technically gifted player, become a more technically gifted person, have a better soccer IQ. If you have that, I don't care what your size is. Weight rooms are everywhere. You can always have, opportunities to get into weight rooms. So if you're smaller, work on the technical side, work on the IQ, and become such a dangerous player on the dribble and with the ball at your feet that it doesn't matter what size you are. The bigger players just look like giant cones at that point. Ziad asked, does the age of a player affect college's opinion on a player? No, but we have restrictions as college coaches on who we can recruit and when we can recruit them. So I cannot actively recruit a player until after June 15th, preceding their junior year. So June 15th, before you begin your junior year of high school, I cannot speak to you before June 15th. You can reach out to me, you can attend ID camps, you can do all of that stuff, but you cannot go. So that is the only restriction on age. A lot of the players nowadays are taking gap years. So we have players who are starting college later, which is perfectly fine. You can start college at any point. Just make sure that if you take a gap year, your amateur status stays amateur. If you're taking a gap year and playing anywhere, you have to make sure that you're not breaking any NCAA rules, which that's going through the clearinghouse and finding out all of those. They're really easy to learn. Basically, don't get paid and don't take anything from anybody as an amateur player, and you should be fine regardless of your age. Ziad asked again, what age should a player start reaching out to coaches and trying to get noticed? I would say start attending ID camps in the end of your 9th grade, so going into your sophomore year, as well as going into your junior year. That's probably the best time for boys to start going to get recruited and getting looked at and getting noticed. You'll also see a lot more coaches at showcases, which as you reach 10th grade, 11th grade, you start to attend more. You can also reach out to coaches. You can email. We cannot email back prior to that June 15th date to actively recruit you, but we can tell you, hey, here's our ID camp, come to ID camp. And at ID camp, because you're attending a camp, we can speak to you. We won't really have a recruiting talk, but we can have a conversation about you as a player. So I think start attending and looking at camps. I know it's a cost and I know it's expensive at times. There are ones that don't cost that much money. A lot of these recruiting agencies put out these ones that are $800. They're not necessary. Find a college that is offering multiple coaches at their ID camp and attend that one. And if you attend one camp a summer, you go mow some lawns and help pay for it for your family. And I promise you, at the end, when you get to a university and the scholarship that you receive, whether it be academic, athletic, it'll pay tenfold over those camps that you went and attended. And those camps are a really good way to get out there. Colin asked, is there any specific points coaches look for when scouting players in specific positions? Yes. So Colin, I saw your question earlier asking about midfielders. So I think varying coaches in their style of play determine what they look for in midfielders in specific positions. For an example, I'll give you two. So at Midwestern State, where I played, the midfielders we look for, because we played a different formation, and it's something that a lot of coaches ask consistently, is can he play for us? Which means, can he do what we need them to do? So as a midfielder, whether it be a 6, an 8, a 10, an outside midfielder, whatever it may be, we played a 3, we called it a 6-1. So we basically had 6 players in the midfield that could do all kinds of activities and different things in the midfield. So we look for players who were clean on the ball. We look for players who had good range of passing, ones who could connect consistent short passes as well as consistent longer passes, ones who could consistently break lines, not just passing, laterally or lumping a ball over the top and hoping for a ball to go into space. More like, an attacking midfielder checking the space. Can we play his feet and get it to him from a defensive midfielder? And then the flip side is, if you're an attacking midfielder, can you consistently find pockets of space to get into those areas? A wide midfielder or an 8, how's the engine? Can they get up and down? Are they going to be able to affect the game positively with their work rate? And do they connect play? Is a wide midfielder going to be able to connect our backs and our forwards through their wing play? Is an 8 going to be able to connect the game through their motor in the middle of the park? Same thing goes for TU. We just tweaked it a little bit because we played a 4-4-2 diamond, so we had 2 8s. So we looked a lot more on work rate and defensive responsibility, how those players were willing to play. We could get away with a little bit less of the passing range because we put the ball on the ground a lot more and played. It wasn't as many longer passes going over the top. It was more balls on the ground, breaking lines. How good are they in possession, and how good are they in the defensive side when it comes to work rate? So that's what we look for in that. And I know another question just popped up, but it disappeared. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Max. How important are the ID camps, and how much of a boost over other players do you get with the coach team when you go to one? That's a great question. I will admit certain ID camps are just money grabbers for people. There's camps that teams do that are going to have 400 kids, and that is good because they get to see a lot of different players, but you as a player can get lost in the shuffle. There's a university who I used to go and work their camps. They sell out their camp every year. 300 players attend every week. So 300 players are there. It's almost impossible for every coach to see every player. Flip side, Tulsa, we just had an ID camp 2 weekends ago, and we had 75 players. So every member of the coaching staff could see everyone. So I think ID camps are extremely important if you can find one that's going to be specific to what you want. If you can find something that's going to give you an opportunity to see to be in front of the coach you want to be in front of, to understand what the team you want to be a part of does and how they play, that's a good way to start and a good place to go. But if you start looking at camps and it seems like it's a massive camp that's going to have tons of people at it, I would really look at if I'm going there for one coach that I want to be in front of him, how often and what's my real opportunity to get in front of him. That would be the biggest thing for an ID camp. Although I do think like I said, specific ones are very important to attend. And you do get a boost. We as coaches have more of an interaction with players there than we're able to on the phone or we're able to through email. So I can really get to know a kid if I see him at an ID camp, and then I get to see him with my own eyes. Watching someone on film is great, but seeing it with my own eyes is something that I think is much more beneficial, where I can see how they are in my environment as opposed to an artificial one with highlight films or their club or whatever it may be. They can participate in what we do. So I do think you get a boost, but it's not something drastic. It's just more of a recognition, more of a initial relationship begins. Good question. Colin, when a scout pulls you aside after a game, what would they talk to you about? So I think it varies. Different universities have different restrictions when it comes to speaking to a player. So like me, for an example, if you are after your junior year, then after a game, I can come talk to you whenever I want. On a single one-off game. If it's a tournament, I cannot speak to you until after you've finished all of your games for that day as a Division I coach. As a Division II coach, I can't speak to you until after you finished all of your games for the weekend. So let's say you have one game on the Friday. After that game, a Division I coach can come talk to you. A Division II coach cannot come talk to you. A Division III coach can come talk to you whenever they want. So it just varies on different levels. They basically just ask you questions. I think the few times that I've spoke to kids after a game, it's just been, what do you want out of college soccer? Have you done any research on the school? Do you know anything about us? That kind of stuff, because it's just an initial contact. Unless you've had multiple conversations, it's just getting to know them initially as opposed to having, lengthy conversation about stuff. Once you've had a a few contacts here and there, maybe it'd be a text message or an email, talking and speaking after a game, the conversation can change. But an initial contact, it's just going to be general. Thought you played well. Here's what we do. Have you seen us play? Do you know anything about the school? Well, we'll be in touch. That kind of stuff. That's generally what a college coach will do. And I think I saw another question pop up on here, but I can't see it anymore. There we go. I got it now. Nope, that's the last one. Okay. Those are good questions, guys. If you have any more, feel free. So, talked about all the ID camps, all that stuff. Let's see, what's a big one? Oh, a big one. What if I play for a smaller club? What can I do to prepare now for college soccer? Great question. Great question. I think most people think that college soccer coaches are only going to watch and attend bigger clubs' games. Not necessarily. Wherever the good players are, that's where we'll go. So I think if you play for a smaller club, I would start creating not a routine, but like a list of coaches and schools that you're interested in, and start contacting them, as well as making sure that while you're playing and you're training, you're supplementing that training. College soccer is hard. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. Training, and this goes into my next question that I was going to answer here. Training with your team is great, but that's such a small part of what you can do. Another person I was speaking to today, they made a really great comment that club soccer and high school soccer is, an hour and a half here, an hour and a half there. You may get 3 sessions a week. Elite level athletes are training 11 to 12 times a week. And that training can vary. That includes recovery, that includes weight room, that includes all that stuff. But they're training 11 to 12 times a week. A college athlete, for me, is training in the regular season, is training, 6 days a week, plus, they may be doing multiple sessions a day. So they may be doing a recovery session, a weight room session, plus out on the field. So they're probably training 7 to 9 times. So I think preparing yourself for what that entails, adding more stuff to your daily routine, adding more things to what you're going to do, that for me is probably the way to make sure that you're prepared and ready to go. And obviously, smaller clubs, you don't have all the same resources. All you need is a body to do a workout. You can do things with, no equipment. You can go to the field or go to a grass field or even concrete and just knock a ball and work on it your own. And that's stuff that you can do to prepare yourself for college soccer, because it's faster, it's stronger, it's harder. And making sure that you're ready to go is paramount, because when you hit 18, you're no longer playing with just 18-year-olds. College soccer, the age is increasing drastically. Just at TU, I had a kid who was born in, 2003? So he was born in 2003, and another player who was born in 1995. So a 27-year-old playing with an 18-year-old. He's almost 10 years older than he is. This is the 27-year-old center back. This is the 18-year-old freshman forward. He has to compete with him every day. So making sure that he's prepared and ready to go is very much needed. Colin asks, what happens after you finish college soccer? There's multiple routes, multiple things. I think if you're lucky, you can continue to play and have a pro career. That's if you're lucky. You have to be really diligent on how you treat your body and how you do everything as you go through. It's not easy at all. I had plans to go play professional soccer. I have had several injuries that derailed that. I also didn't take care of my body well enough. So I'm well aware of what I did. I have kids that, as they're finishing and getting towards the end of their college career as a player and their college career as a student, they already have jobs. They have things lined up and ready to go. I have kids that have no idea what they're going to do, go and figure it out. And I have guys that play professionally. I have teammates that I played with. I have players that I've coached. Right now I can think of 4 players I've had that have professional careers. So there's a lot of opportunities there. It just depends on what you want. Not every college soccer player is going to be a pro. Not every college soccer player wants to be a pro. There are players who come to college and want to be doctors, but they can also play soccer at the same time. So it just depends on what you want. Can you get released from a college team? Yes. The best way to describe this, and I describe it to people like this all the time, and I don't mean it to be daunting, but it's true. When you attend and start to play for a college soccer team, if you're receiving an athletic scholarship, you sign what's called a national letter of intent, which means that you intend to attend that school. When you don't get an athletic scholarship and you just receive academic, you're still a part of the team, but there's different restrictions. So an NLI is a business contract. For college coaches, our livelihood relies on victories, on wins, on results. And so if a player comes in and is not performing and is not doing everything they can to get better, they can have things happen and get released from a team. We cannot, as college coaches, if you are on athletic money, we cannot reduce and we cannot cut your athletic aid unless we have just cause. So if you get offered, a full ride somewhere, that's your full ride for 4 years. Unless you render yourself ineligible or you have discipline issues or a medical issue. Other than that, when you sign that national letter of intent, you sign for 4 years. But you sign that national letter of intent that says you're going to do everything in your power to be a good footballer and be a good student athlete. And if you don't do that, a college coach can come in and tell you, look, I'll honor your scholarship for this year, but you're not going to play. You're not going to factor, unless something drastically changes, you're not going to factor into this at all. So then it becomes, what do I want? Do I want to be a person who just sits on the bench, trains hard every day, and never gets any playing time? Or do I want to be a person that continues to play? So you can be released and you can be cut if you don't hold up your end of the contract, but the same thing for a coach. If a coach doesn't hold up his end, he reduces it, he looks to do something with your scholarship, then you have just cause to do whatever is necessary too. So I think it's good that you can have that opportunity to be released because it keeps you working hard and keeps you wanting more, but I would not fear it. So I would not fear, not playing well, not doing that. I would go out and just work. You go out, you work hard, you do what's necessary, and the results will happen. I have a saying that I tell all my players, if you do things right, the results will fall your way. If you train hard every day, if you work hard every day, if you attend everything you're supposed to attend, the results will fall your way. If you don't do everything right, you don't attend what you're supposed to attend, you don't participate in the way you're supposed to participate, you don't give the effort you're supposed to give, things won't go your way and things will change. So as long as you're participating and giving your all, which is all you can give, you're going to have a good opportunity to play. If you don't, there's a real likelihood that can change very quick. So that is a good question. We got any more? Or I'm going to answer one. Let's see. So, do I need to do extra training outside of team trainings? I think I touched on that. Yes. But I would also say this. Spend time not only doing extra training, but doing everything else that goes into being a good footballer. Spend time on your recovery. Spend time on getting better sleep. Spend time on your classwork. Spend time on, in the weight room. If you don't have access to a weight room, spend time figuring out how to make physical gains in order to become a better footballer. You don't always have to go in, and I know it's the old thing in high schools, you get a lot of football coaches and things like that, strength coaches, bench press and squat. That's not great for a soccer player. That's not great. So I would do extra footwork and extra training and stuff like that, but I'll also spend extra time on making sure you do all the other stuff. Work on your nutrition. That's I can't stress enough how much of a factor that plays into college athletes. Colin, what happens if you get seriously injured during a college game? So every college student has insurance. So the school, if you get hurt during a game, 9 times out of 10, it is taken care of by the school. So I had 3 injuries during my college career that kept me out for quite some time. The first one was in 2012, my junior year of college. I almost broke my ankle. I rolled it and had little bits of bone snap off at the edge. So I took a red shirt during that period of time, so I didn't waste a year, and I was able to work on my recovery. I had time with athletic training staff, which that's their whole job, is to make sure that you're ready to play. And then I also did a lot of work in the weight room to make sure that my body was prepared and ready to take the rigors of college soccer. Second one, I did long throw-ins for years, so I've torn, you can tell how I roll forward. I've torn almost all the ligaments in my shoulders. So I was in a game, put my hand on a kid's shoulder slipped out of socket. And that kept me out for a week and a half, 2 weeks in my year just coming back from a red shirt. You work again with strength and conditioning, and then you take it upon yourself to make sure you're doing the things necessary in prehab to strengthen your body. I've played with guys who've torn ACLs. I've played with guys I had a player that I coached a couple years ago prior to going into college. He blew out everything in his knee. And we made sure we put him on a path to progress into playing again. And he did get into a college game. Ultimately, he decided to retire, but he got into a college game. That is not something that'll get you released from a team. That is not rendering yourself ineligible. If you tear an ACL, if you dislocate, break a bone, whatever it is, your scholarship is still honored. Your place on the team is still honored. You just have a lot of work now to do to get back to where you need to be. So a good example of that, there's a player that I had at the University of Tulsa. Prior to coming in he was supposed to be a student athlete fall of 2019, I believe, something like that. Tore his ACL in May. Stayed home, did all of his rehab, everything, honored scholarship, came in January after he had finished all of his stuff, went through the spring. At the end of the spring, he tore his ACL again, same leg. So he tore what had just been repaired. Honored scholarship, went through the whole process again, but this time using TU doctors, using everything that was necessary there. He did not, and then the pandemic hit. He did not play a full game for, I want to say it was over 1,000 days, and then worked extremely hard to make sure his body was prepared to play. He was Offensive Player of the Year and Player of the Year for the conference twice, and has had multiple opportunities to go and play professional soccer, was invited to the MLS Combine this last year, and is probably one of the most dangerous players in college soccer. It's just how bad you want it if you get seriously injured. Now, if you're injured to the point of never being able to play again, that's a different story. You can decide to stay and medically retire, which can be an option, or you can decide to just be a student athlete or a student somewhere. That's where that goes. So, anybody else have any questions? These are good. You guys have had some good ones. I'll talk about just a few things if you guys don't have anything else. Okay, there's a question here, and Coach Anthony brought it up the other day when he and I were talking. Okay, here we go. What roles should my parents play in the recruiting process? Should they do my recruiting, or should I do 90% of it? So, and I talked to other people yesterday about this same kind of thing. Your parents can be involved as much as they want to be involved, but 90% of communication with college coaches should happen with the player, right? It should not be me talking to your mom or your dad every time I communicate with you. Because when you leave their house and you come to college, you are now on your own and you are my responsibility. And a lot of the time, players handle that well. But if the mom or dad handles all of your recruiting and is the one that develops a relationship with the coach, with the school, when you attend that school and things start to not go your way, which, let's be honest, happens, if you weren't a part of it during the beginning half, it's a real struggle to figure out how to manage that when things don't work, right? My new boss has a saying, the parents don't play for me, the player does. So the player is the person I want to talk to. If you want your parents to reach out and make the initial contact, or they can type up the email, sign your name, that's fine. It doesn't have to come from your email address. It doesn't have to be from you. But at the end of the day, I understand that they are your parents. You're their baby. They want you to be safe and have a successful college soccer career. They're not the ones playing. You are. They're not the ones attending class. You are. They're not the ones that I get to yell at. You are. So the better equipped you are to handle all of those things, and the better our relationship is, player to coach, the more efficient we are going to be able to handle problems and issues. And I'll give you a really good example. So my first college soccer job, I was at a small university in Arkansas. And the players there, they come from varying backgrounds. I had a kid who, his mom handled a lot of what he did. He didn't know how to do laundry. He didn't know how to do all this stuff. She handled 90% of the recruiting process for him, so we didn't really have a relationship at all. I can also cut hair, so I used to cut all my players' hair. And one day I sat him down and asked what kind of haircut he wanted. He said, I don't know. My mom usually does it, so let me call her and see what she does. Your mom is not going to be there every minute of every day. When a professor doesn't agree with you, your mom is not going to be able to call the professor and say, why are you mean to my son? You're going to have to handle it, or I'm going to have to handle it. If I yell at you and I push you, you're going to have to handle it. And that begins in the recruiting process with the contacts. If you're able to have a conversation with me and look me in the eye and be able to say, this is what I want, this is how I want to do it, this is what we're going to do together, that goes a long way. Okay, so parents can be involved as much as they want to be involved, but players, 90% of it is on you. And if you're doing it right, it's going to go so far in the coach's eyes. How do you get in contact with coaches and scouts? It's a great question. So there's a lot of different ways to contact coaches. Every college soccer program, there's something like 205 Division I college soccer programs, 200 Division IIs, 200 Division IIIs. I think there's 1,000 different programs that you can have. They all have websites, and all of the coaches' emails are listed on those websites as well as their phone numbers. Mine is not on UCA just yet because my official start date isn't for another week, but as soon as I get there, my UCA email and my phone number is the first thing they throw on there. If you see a school that you want to contact, if you feel like this school, I've watched this game, I know this team, I feel like this is the place, just go invite them to a game. It doesn't have to be a huge game. If you play for a small club and you're attending a showcase, email a coach and see if they want to come. Most showcases nowadays, the college coaches have to register, and when they register, their email and their phone number automatically appears on the showcase website. So let's say you're playing in a smaller showcase in Atlanta, right? If you're playing in a smaller showcase in Atlanta and you go to that showcase website, look for college coaches attending or college coaches or anything along those lines. And usually there's a giant list of every coach with a picture of their face, the school they play for, what division they're in, their email, and their phone number. invite those guys to come and watch you. If you don't have a showcase coming up, or you don't have a game coming up where college coaches are already going to be there, invite them to a club game, invite them to a game. You'll be surprised at how easy it is for us to attend games. I live here in Tulsa right now. If there's a high school game, I live 3 minutes from the high school. If there's a high school game going on, I have no problem driving over there and just watching a high school game and seeing if there's a kid in the game playing. I have no problem, going to the local park and seeing, people playing, a club game, whatever it may be. If I'm within reason, I'll attend. Now, if you're trying to talk to a coach who's 5-6 hours away from you and you only have games at home coming up, I wouldn't invite them to drive 5 or 6 hours. It's probably not going to happen. They're probably not going to fly. We don't have massive budgets to allow us to do that, but we will attend what we can. So I would just reach out that way and just say, hey, I'm playing on this field. This is my name. This is my number. Can you come watch? Also in that email, attach a highlight. Attach, any kind of film you have, even if it's a full game. Attach those. If it's a highlight, maximum 5 minutes. Put all of your good stuff at the front. And then if anything is kind of questionable, you're not sure, leave that for the end. And make sure there's good music. I told people this the other day. Make sure there's good music. It'll hook a coach immediately. Have that in there and just hope. And I think the biggest thing that I could say about having contact with college coaches is don't stop. Be almost annoying to the point where they're going to know who you are. Don't send an email a week. I currently have a kid who sends one email every 2 weeks, and it's the exact same email over and over and over again. That's great for him continuing to let us know. Does it get on my nerves? Yes, but do I know who he is? Absolutely. I absolutely know who he is now because he's consistently telling me who he is, what he does, and how he does it. So just email. Okay. I think the last thing that we can talk about in particular, because I know it's getting a little bit later over there for you guys, and it's a big one, is what makes me not recruitable? What makes me not want to recruit a player for my team? There's multiple things that can cause a coach to not want to recruit you. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with your play. You can be, the greatest player in the world, but if you're not a great person, you're cocky, you're arrogant, your communication is not great. And by not great, I don't mean that you're shy. That we can work through. But if your communication is over the top, if you're telling me, and I've had kids do this, if you look me dead in the eye and you say, Coach, I'm the player that's going to win you a national championship, you need to give me a full ride, and you can't kick a ball more than 40 yards, you haven't scored a goal in 6 games, you're not a kid that I'm willing to work with because you don't understand what it means to be a team player and play at a level that we play at. And that's harsh, but that's true. If you're the best player on your team, that is not something that is going to make me just be like, oh my God, I need to have this kid. If you're a player that is the best player on your team, but you do a lot more for your team than just be a good footballer, you're communicative, you're a leader, you're a player who brings everyone else into the game, you consistently show that you want your teammates to be good, that's a player that I want. A player who, a pass doesn't reach its intended target from your teammate, you throw your hands up in the air. Ah, man, I can hear you talking trash about your teammate. Immediately, not for me. I think there's things that can be good about those types of players, but those types of players have to have a certain attribute that makes me want them. Most of the time, if you're a player who's not a great teammate, if you're a player who's not a good person, it's just not going to work because I don't want to work with you. At the end of the day, I have to work with you for 4 years. I have to deal with you for 4 years. And if you're a person that I want to be around and I want to work with, I'm going to recruit you. If you're a person that I just don't see myself getting on with and I have, run-ins with all the time, you're not a player I want to recruit. And that does happen. I've had players that we just butt heads. That's what we do. They can be great players, but they're just not great people all the time. And that goes a long way. And not, to piggyback off of that and what makes you not recruitable, you guys live in a day and age, and I live in it too, where social media is everywhere. If you are posting things that are not great, if you are posting things that are questionable, if you are linking things to your pages that are questionable, if you are doing things that are questionable, if you are, not a good person on social media, I'm going to see it. And that's not a person I want around either. I have to watch what I post. I have to do what I do because I want players and parents, and I want, people in the community to want their players to be with me. And I have to make sure that what I'm doing and the person that I am is a good person. You have to do the same. And social media is a giant aspect of that, because right now, when a kid sends me their information, I've seen a lot of kids that have attached their Instagrams to there because they're posting, videos of them training, videos of them doing those things. That's great. But if I scroll down on your page, and I see something that is not what a 16-year-old should be doing, that's an immediate red flag. Immediate red flag. So make sure that you're putting out into this stratosphere, or whatever you want to call it, a vibe of, I'm a player who's coachable, I'm a player who's adaptable, I'm a player who, wants to work, wants to be in your program, wants to get better, wants to learn. Those kids are getting recruited. The kid that says, I don't need you, I've got pro offers, I've got this, I can go and do that. Okay, well, I don't need to recruit you, and there's all these other kids that I can recruit. Go be a pro. And if it doesn't work out, don't come crying back to me because you didn't treat me with the same respect that I would treat you with. And another part of that, especially on this pathway of, I've got other options, I've got all these things. Options for American kids, domestic players, are dwindling. Players from overseas, whether that be South America, Central America, Europe, Asia, Russia, all those places, they're all coming over to the U.S. to play. They all want to play college soccer because they see the value in it, and it gives them an opportunity to get an education while playing football still. So the better person you are and the better you do things, like I said, you do things right, results will fall your way, the more likely you'll have good opportunities. And that's the last question I had on here. You guys have had some really good questions in there as well. If you have any more, feel free to put it in there. I can answer. I know we're getting to about an hour, and I know your time over there has been. What if I don't make D1? Is D2, NAIA, or JUCO a good level? Yes. College soccer as a whole is good. And to piggyback off of that, I played Division II college soccer. I had opportunities to play Division I, but I did not take it. I played Division II at two very good Division II schools, and I lost once in 4 years to a Division I. I beat Tulsa, I beat Marshall, I beat Radford, I beat SMU, all these teams. We handled them easily because the levels are comparable. So if you don't get a D1 offer, it's not the end of the world. You may just need to reevaluate what it is you want out of your soccer program, out of your soccer career, and say, okay, does this Division II offer the same thing? NAIA, does this NAIA team offer something that I'm going to like? And JUCO is the same thing. JUCO is a great way to get into college soccer and continue to develop, because we recruit JUCOs all the time. So don't get caught up in the level, the D1, Division II, Division III. Don't get caught up in that. The biggest thing, and I tell all the recruits who come on campus, is when you see a school that you think you might like, go to that school. Go put your feet on that campus. And if you can put your feet there and you can answer this question, then it may be the place for you. If soccer goes away, can I be here and be a functioning person in this community? Because at one point or another, the soccer is going to stop. You know, like Colin asked about serious injury, that happens. If you have a serious injury and you can't play anymore, is this the place you want to be? And, you know, just because it's a Division I, if it's not the place you want to be and not the place you're going to continue to be, don't feel like you have to take it. If there's a Division II, it's got comparable soccer that offers you things that you want and things that you can live with, and it feels good being there, it feels like you can be a part of that, then go be a part of that. So I saw in the live chat that no one else has anything, so I've taken up enough of your time. I feel like I've rambled on for quite a bit, but I really appreciate you guys coming on and asking all these questions and getting to learn college soccer from our perspective. You know, it's daunting at times to look at it and say, oh my gosh, college soccer, but it's really easy. You know, we're people too. All you have to do is figure out how to speak to us, and you know, everything will take shape and go on its way. So thanks guys, thanks Coach Anthony for putting it together. I really appreciated you giving me this opportunity. So I'm gonna end it. I'll put it in the post, and anybody that wants to watch it later can. Peace guys, thanks.